Okay, I know this might seem like kind of a maybe odd topic, but maybe really not. But I definitely think the conversation is warranted. So the sex is good, and I mean really good. But sometimes you can still feel empty, like the experience is not fully landing emotionally. And sometimes, when you're in a situation like that, you start questioning yourself, maybe even ruminating, not trusting your gut or intuition that something is still off, even though the sex is phenomenal. Everything looks pretty good on the surface. You all could speak each other's erotic languages, you connect with each other's erotic core. Something is still off. Now, for some people, they may not be complaining. They'll be like, Angie, I don't need nothing else. Like, that's good. Sex is good. Everything else is good. And that very well could be true. But for a lot of people, to have great sex and really nothing else, sometimes it just defeats the purpose of really feeling like you're connecting with that person. And that feeling is real. That's a very real feeling. So a lot of times it might mean like something else is going on deeper in the emotional connection that sex just isn't touching. And I want to really sit with this for a minute because I know this kind of can confuse a lot of people. Like, okay, when the sex is good, like genuinely enjoyable, but something still feels off emotionally, that can be a challenge. So, the first thing I want us to do is just not feel weird or abnormal for experiencing something like this. It doesn't automatically mean that the relationship is bad, or something is wrong with you or your partner. It just means that there's a difference between the physical connection and the emotional fullness. So here's the thing, you can be in a relationship where there's attraction, it's chemistry, great intimacy, but after or even during the experiences, there's still this sense of, why doesn't this feel like enough? Now, come on, y'all. I know some of y'all can understand where I'm coming from with this particular topic. Now, let's not try to act like, oh, this is just so unheard of. It's like your body is engaged with that particular person, but you still feel like this huge disconnect. Or maybe not even huge, but you still feel that there's a disconnect enough to where you feel like, where's this really going? And sometimes this is where people get kind of confused because they think like, well, if the sex is good, I shouldn't really feel this way, right? But a lot of times this isn't about the sex itself. It's what's happening emotionally outside of the bedroom. So when we think about outside of the bedroom, it's how emotionally safe, you feel with that particular person, whether you feel truly seen or understood, right? Because sexually, that person can see you like on a whole other level. But then when you're not naked, you're like, okay, having a conversation, you're like, oh, we are really very different people. Like we see things very differently, or we may see things similar, but we're still not really connected. Like we're barely kind of meeting in the middle. And that's frustrating. Um, Sometimes you can also feel like the tension, the distance, or like the unspoken stuff, right? But it's like you don't really want to rock the boat or, rattle the fence, because the sex is so good and you don't want that to stop. And sometimes you may have challenges really relaxing with that person because you're like, they still don't really understand me, outside of when we're not lying down. Because if there's emotional distance outside of the physical intimacy, it doesn't always just disappear because sex is happening. Sex doesn't always solve all of those problems. So it's not just about good sex versus bad sex. It's more about whether the connection feels complete or only partially met. And those are two very different experiences in the body. So instead of asking, why isn't this enough? A better question might be, what's missing in the emotional connection outside of this? And if that's something that you've been feeling, I want you to know that you're not alone in that. A lot of people do feel this way, they just don't always have the language for it. So let's talk about, what do you do in a situation like that? How do you remedy that, right? So a lot of times we're thinking like, okay, I need a strategy. I need to figure this out, because the sex is phenomenal. I don't want to lose that, but I really need this emotional connection as well too. We got to be very forthcoming with this one. A lot of it is because your day-to-day interactions with each other. You have to look at those things. Like for instance, um, maybe a lot of you all's conversations are pretty surface level. You're not really talking about things that truly matter to you at your core. For whatever reason, you're avoiding that. If it's a time factor, maybe you all are really consumed with other things. Maybe it's a situationship, so you can't really explore that part of your relationship like you would if you were in the free and clear. Who knows? But there's something blocking that. Um, a lot of times your interactions with each other might feel rushed so you can hurry up and get to the sex. And so sometimes you need to really slow it down. Not so much slow down sex, but slow down really connecting with each other, finding out what each other really likes, understanding the nuances of each other. That makes a difference. Sometimes we can be even emotionally avoidant. Like we want to say something, but then something pulls us back. Or we're fearful of, if we start to open up, will this be used against me in some way? So we choose to block that part off or just kind of put it on the shelf. For right now, believe it or not, that is impacting your emotional connection with one another. So sex becomes physically engaging, but emotionally it feels a little isolated. This is a big one, y'all. Oh, sex is being used as a release as opposed to a connection. Okay. So a lot of times we might be using sex as a stress reliever, or a part of a routine. We're just used to doing this typically around this time, every week or every month. Or, we're just so physically attracted to someone. We're like, gotta get this out. But that does not speak to things that bring about emotional closeness and connection, such as like emotional repair. Like when there are issues or something going on between the two of you all and you're not really getting to the root of it and trying to work on the issue together, i.e. emotional repair, then that doesn't bring about emotional closeness. A lot of times you got to be attuned to one another too. Like recognize body languages and tone of voice, shifting, and all of those types of things, and not to use it to say, you know what, since you act like that, I'm gonna just step back. I'm not going to talk about it, because with that mentality, now we're just making assumptions instead of just saying, I've noticed something because I'm attuned to you. I've noticed this. Seems like it has shifted a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because this is just what I'm noticing on my end. And allow each other to speak, from your own personal experiences, not from a place of, well, I'm acting like this because you did this. It's just like, I've just noticed that, this is what's going on. And so I felt myself adjusting, to you, but maybe that was inaccurate. I just want to know. And that's how you open up those conversations so that you can kind of gain a little bit more clarity and get closer, with one another. So when you don't have that, sex can feel good, but it doesn't feel full. You're really missing out on the huge experience, or the overall experience, should I say. This is another one, you all. Oh, such an important point. Sometimes we're missing emotional attunement during intimacy. And what I mean by that is we're missing the eye contact. We're missing the responsiveness. I've talked about this in other videos. We're missing presence with one another, and really feeling met by our partners. So when you're having sex, and so for instance, when we think of certain positions, right? Sometimes we're in that very like carnal, animalistic state where we just want to get it in and get off. And so doggy style, for instance, is one of those positions that can really speak to that. But if that is how you all are relating more often than not sexually, then you're missing out on this experience where you all both can really see each other's facial expressions, or really understand how each other's bodies are connecting in that way. And so when you resort to a sexual act such as that one, you're missing out on those opportunities. Or sometimes, yes, we are really in the moment, having sex, you're closing your eyes, you're just feeling all the things. But from time to time, look at each other, even talk to each other during sex, laugh with each other. Those are those pieces where sex can feel good, but it's not great, and then it feels like, why is something missing? These are the things. These are just really two bodies interacting as opposed to two people connecting during sex. Now, here's another one too, pretty big one when it comes to, having good sex, but not really connected emotionally. There may be some unresolved tension. Maybe there was something that, did kind of like, piss you off a little bit or made you upset, or that you didn't feel comfortable with or that you didn't agree with and you never voiced it. You never expressed how you felt. And it bottled up, and it became kind of like resentment. That unresolved, tension can also be a barrier to feeling closer with one another. um, Sometimes just feeling misunderstood. Like, how when you feel like you're talking with someone, you feel like you've explained it every way possible, all the different angles to meet that person where they are. And for whatever reason, it's still not landing with them. Feeling misunderstood pretty often can also diminish the emotional connection between two people. Sometimes, if you're also emotionally withdrawing in your everyday life, just personally, that may be a challenge too, to why you're not feeling connected with another person. Because if you're unable to do that with yourself on a daily basis, it's kind of hard to connect with someone else too. And when you kind of lack vulnerability, like just the ability to say, you know what, these are my raw feelings. This is what I've been thinking about. This is what I struggle with. This is what I'm fearful of. This is what I'm excited about. Like all of those spaces and vulnerability are not being expressed, to one another. And that can also cause the emotional distance between two people. So all of those things don't just disappear while you're having sex. It just kind of a back seat when sex is kind of the star of the show, but it's still there. So how do you fix it, right? So a lot of times you might think that having more sex will fix it. And I can understand why. But in order to rebuild an emotional connection, that has to be taking place outside of sex. Just being honest. Um, this means more honest conversations, um, sharing your internal experiences, not just specifics, not just logistics, like, okay, when are we going to have sex? When are we going to meet up and do this? When are we going to do that? Or what position would you like? And let's do that. And that's not really connecting on an internal level. And start trying to name your feelings about things earlier rather than later. When they sit and when they fester, one person can also feel like, wow, why didn't you tell me this earlier? But then also that's building up within that person too, who's withholding, how they're feeling in that moment. And so over time, because you're not expressing these things a little bit more consistently, believe it or not, over time it can kind of get a little convoluted. Sometimes you can even forget, what was bothering you at one point, and then your mind says, okay, well, maybe this is what's bothering me, and then it just comes out all jumbled and confused. And so again, that can erode, the emotional connection as well. Again, when we're talking about being connected sexually but not emotionally, um, again, like I spoke about in another video, about slowing down, slow down that rhythm a little bit, because a lot of times when people are not connecting emotionally, but they are sexually, it's because they're probably doing these things at a fast pace. It's functional, it's just kind of like, I know what to do, I know how to have sex, but are you really present in that moment of the sexual experience? Sometimes you're doing it while you're tired, you just feel like this is something that we need to do to make sure we stay physically connected. Um, but you're tired, you're not even there, like, so a lot of times during sex, try your best to tell your partner, if you're not fully here, let's try for a time when we can at least be present, let's say 85% of the time, at least, so that I know that we can really enjoy this experience. So, again, presence, slowing down, and emotional check ins with each other is really going to be beneficial to increasing the emotional connection and not just the sex. And like I said before, when you bring that presence into the physical space, you're able to slow down a lot more. You're able to use more eye contact, check in with each other while you're having sex. Does this feel good? What do you like? What do you desire? I want to make sure that you're feeling good in this moment. Check in with each other. Don't just go through these motions and going straight to trying to achieve this orgasmic goal. The goal is really to just enjoy the journey. And a lot of times we're not. It's about awareness during sex, not just a performance. And again, do you feel safe with this person? Do you feel like you can trust them? Do you feel like you can share what your fantasies are and it be open to a conversation or a willingness, to try something new? Also, that can shut down, you know, emotional intimacy as well when you don't feel like you're really able to say the things that you want to say. Sex can still be good, but is it great? Sex really just amplifies whatever is going on emotionally, too. So that's something to consider. Um, if you're feeling close to someone, sometimes that sex can make you feel even closer. But if that person is not responding to what you're putting out emotionally, then it can also fall flat because it's like, okay, like I'm feeling great in this space, but it's not translating emotionally for me. So again, the truth is you don't fix empty sex with more sex. You fix it by strengthening emotional connection. So sex is something to land in. I mean, tell me your thoughts, you guys. Have you ever experienced, having pretty good sex with someone? Like, you all really kind of understand each other sexually and know what each other likes sexually, but there's still an emptiness there, and you don't quite know why. Have you ever had that feeling? Definitely share in the comments. Love to hear it. Or if you don't want to talk about yourself in first person, you can also say you're just sharing for a friend. It's totally up to you. But yeah, let's kind of get this conversation started because this is something that, a lot of people really do deal with. And there aren't too many spaces to really talk openly about it. So let me know your thoughts.